this has to do with change, modification, alter, adding, and deleting. And the keywords that we use are methods, digesting, and hashing. Keep those very handy. And I will all week long say, asking you guys, I'll say keyword alert, and you have to quickly find the keyword. And that will tune you into the material yet even quicker. All right, so in this case, the CIA triad. All right, these are the three major goals or principles with information security. So in a security plan, you attempt to mitigate threats. What does mitigate mean? Minimize or reduce. Exactly. So minimize threats or risks to, again, your asset. An asset value sits right in the center here, and you need to protect it from improper changes, or to prevent it from being disclosed to people, or to make sure that it's constantly available to you, or to anybody else who needs it that's supposed to need it.
Excuse me, is there any keywords for availability that you have?
Keywords for availability, although availability is more of the redheaded stepchild of the triad, unfortunately. It doesn't get as much attention, and you have to build it into your architecture. So common keywords that I use would be fault tolerance, anything with high availability, failover, clustering, RAIDs, backup SANs, anything to keep your data available is going to be a keyword there. So just to run through the list again, that would be a RAID, high availability, clustering, failover, active passive failovers, anything with high availability, escrows even, right? You could say escrow, a third party where you keep your stuff. You can even throw in escrows. And this is not an exhaustive list. We'll be adding to this list as we go. So as I see keywords, I'm going to add them to our IAC triad. So yeah, here's a whole list of keywords here too. So mechanisms to protect information from being disclosed. So it should make sense that if I say unauthorized disclosure has to deal with actually getting the information to someone, like I accidentally disclosed it, so I told you something I wasn't supposed to tell you. So that speaks to confidentiality. You know, in your practice test questions, they don't always come out and say confidentiality. But they will say you need to protect against unauthorized disclosure. And you need to go, oh, wait a second, that's an IAC triad keyword, and that goes in, here. And so we can protect the IAC triad with encryption. If you encrypt something, it prevents unauthorized people from actually being able to view it. And the whole reason we classify data is to determine levels of protection. How secret, what's the level of secrecy that you need to keep it. And once you specify, okay, this is top secret, you're going to need a way for people to authenticate themselves and prove that they have a clearance and the need to know to actually get the information. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
You guys have highlighters? You need highlighters? I have some highlighters in the car. You want some highlighters? All right? There's some more. So ways that confidentiality can be breached, you got social engineering. Why is social engineering an attack on confidentiality?
Because they're striving to get unauthorized access.
Right, if I just stand over your shoulder and I look at something and it's meant for your eyes and I happen to see it, then that's disclosure. If I just plug into the network and sniff the traffic, why is that attacking confidentiality?
Unauthorized access.
Because you're not supposed to have that access.
Again, so unauthorized disclosure. Or what if I had the ability to steal files or shoulder surf, things like that. Could be just as something as a user being unaware and just mishandling something because they don't know any better, because they weren't there that in the security awareness training class, right? All right, so integrity. Watch for the keyword differences. Prevent unauthorized. Oh, there you go. Unauthorized modification of data. Tools to maintain integrity. It can be intrusion detection. It can be actually encryption too, but that's kind of a trick. Okay? if I classify something as top secret and you don't have access to it, I can't disclose it to you because you don't have the clearance, well then you can't change it either. So it's dominated by confidentiality in the traditional it's been encrypted sense, but it also prevents you from making an unauthorized change because you can't get access to it. But more so, there are other elements of encryption that will actually check the integrity. For example, in digital signatures, you have a message digest or an MD5 or SHA hash on a digital signature. And you can use that to guarantee that there are no unauthorized modifications, alterations, deletions, etc., etc., etc.
Non-repudiation of the following.
What's that?
Non-repudiation.
What about it?
That's exactly the following.
What I do is this. I split integrity, because of course I couldn't leave well enough alone. So this is my unofficial hybrid model of the IAC Triad, CIA. I split it into authenticity and non-repudiation. Okay, and because when we get into cryptography, you'll see that the subject of non-repudiation, authenticity, and integrity work very, very close together. It's easier to extend non-repudiation and authenticity from integrity than it is secrecy or confidentiality. But we'll get to that here shortly. You guys with me? Say uh-huh. All right, so ways that integrity can be breached. First, and the obvious one is uneducated users. Another way is malicious code. Not exhaustive, or suck. Here are your availability. Let's see if we can pick out some keywords here. In other words, we need for this information to be available. So we're going to make it available. So we can do that by keyword backup systems. When you have the proper environmental controls like heating, humidity, electricity, things like that, when all of that's working in its pristine sense, that also will contribute to your data being available. You don't have things like line noise or transient noise, which is just the disturbance on a line. You don't have that interfering or attempting to corrupt hard drives. You also could make things like quality of service. When you have a high quality service, things tend to be more available. All right, so things that can affect availability would be things like denial of service. If I put a denial of service on the company and you can't get access to your resources because I'm consuming your network bandwidth, well, that would be a problem. Could be improperly configured systems, like for example, default usernames and passwords on a router. I get access to that, and then I can go play with your router. Maybe I decide to shut it down for a while, and then you can't access it either. And also malicious code can affect the availability of systems, right? If you get a virus outbreak, right, and all of your systems are affected, you can't use them either. Agree or disagree? Agree. All right. So let's go over some basic security definitions. If you'd like easy points in your practice exams, you will know vulnerabilities, threats, risks, exposures, and countermeasures. So let's start putting these in major categories. What would be a virus? Okay, yeah, it's a threat. That doesn't mean that you're vulnerable to it, does it? No, your viruses will go out on the internet all the time, but that doesn't mean that you're vulnerable. So if I say an unpatched system,
Vulnerability.
all of this will make up risk, but that would be a vulnerability within the system, which would pose a risk.
Are these ordered?
Not necessarily.
You indicated by what you just said that these are kind of ordered.
I would say that they all interrelate, not necessarily ordered though.
Okay.
Because you could talk about, if you want to go with your risk calculations, you normally have threats times vulnerabilities. Well, that will contribute to risks. So there's different ways of looking at it. Right now, we'll just list them out. Or if you want to go with this flowchart, you could say there's a vulnerability. Now there may be a threat that could take advantage of me, which increases my risk of exposure. And if I don't put a countermeasure in place, I'm up to my toes in mud. So let's say you get infected with the SASR99 virus. That would be an instance of
Exposure.
That'd be an exposure. Let's say I update my antivirus signatures. That would be a countermeasure. Exactly. So there's the attack surface. As security professionals, we want to minimize the attack surface. It basically states that you want to reduce the area of attack. That's why we add in control. That's why we have layered defenses. So the attack surface is really, how can I break in? How can I affect integrity, confidentiality, and availability? Any questions? All right, so vulnerability. I want you to circle a weakness in a system. Your key word for vulnerability is a weakness in a system. Those are your keywords. Again, we're going to play the game of keywords because it's a lot easier to remember a handful of keywords than it is, 1,100 pages of notes. So a weakness in a system. So those weaknesses could exist, for example, if you didn't patch your systems, you didn't have current virus definitions, you had an improper configured firewall, or maybe it's just relaxed physical security. All of those could contribute to weaknesses in systems. And for that matter, you could also say there's physical weaknesses, administrative weaknesses, technical weaknesses, and operational weaknesses too, if you like. Hence the value of the chart. And we could put in controls, such as preventative controls, preventative, detective, deterrent, corrective, compensative, etc., etc. So threats. Threat, circle the keyword, potential hazard. Potential hazard. Now there's a couple different ways to look at threats. You could say internal threats versus external threats. In any instance, the threats are going to take advantage of your vulnerability. So what is a vulnerability? Weakness in a system. Threats take advantage of that weakness in a system. Could be something as simple as open ports on uneducated users, or maybe environmental factors such as heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. Next, you got risk. Circle the keyword probability of the threat taking advantage of the vulnerability. So it's a probability. And we can measure that quantitatively and qualitatively. We'll get to that a little bit later. Higher risks comes with more vulnerabilities and increased threats. Like for example, if you ever connected your Wi-Fi on your laptops, it would normally ask you your very, very last screen, it'll say, hey, what are you connecting to? Is this a public network, a private network? Where are you? And it's simply specifying what's available based on what you click. If you're in a public area, things get locked down more. If you're at home, things are a little, things like file sharing are naturally enabled. Then an exposure. Exposure means something bad happened. Your IAC triad has been affected in some way. An instance of exposure. It could be something like data deletion or modification or loss of integrity in any way, shape, or form. It could be through malicious code. And it could be something like disclosure too, unauthorized viewing of credit cards, social security numbers, phone numbers, etc., etc. Either way, we can put these exposures into the IAC triad. So modification, what part of the triad does that belong in? Integrity. Unauthorized viewing of a credit card. Confidentiality.
So exposure is the, it requires that the risk has been taken advantage of, or
yes.
Or exposure, does exposure simply mean that you are exposed to the risk?
No, the latter. In other words, something has now affected the IAC triad. All right, so there was a threat out there, your system was vulnerable, now you actually got that malicious code or advanced persistent threat, whatever the case is, and now somehow the integrity of your data, or it could be data at rest or data in transit, nonetheless, the integrity has been affected, or confidentiality-wise, something has been disclosed that shouldn't have been disclosed. Could it be something as simple as I know what type of server you have, as opposed to not knowing what type of server you have. Because maybe I could take that type of server and that build number and then go research that and find more vulnerabilities. So it's actually an instance of risk where risk actually has an exposure, meaning you have been infected. So countermeasures. Countermeasure is a control that you put in place, and there's all sorts of countermeasures that you can put in place. You could have preventative countermeasures, detective countermeasures, deterrence, corrective, recovery, etc., etc., etc. See where I'm going with that? There, your chart. Processes and standards are used to combat and reduce the risk. So ultimately, the countermeasure needs to reduce the risk that's out there. Some things that naturally reduce risk, or a good countermeasure per se, would be, keeping the latest and greatest service packs, virus definitions, things like that. Actually train your staff. Have access control systems in place. Use biometric devices. Make sure everybody's properly trained and aware. Sir?
This does not take into account the corrective measures to correct from exposure. You're not talking, nowhere here or anywhere else have you talked about what I'm going to do to fix the exposure.
Like transfer the risk, reduce the risk,
No.
buy insurance?
To clean out your systems, for example. The fact that I put in new service packs and update virus does not necessarily clean out my backups or other kinds of things that I may have done. So there's other things that obviously would have to be done here to clean up an exposed system. If it was hacked and the information was stolen, that's a different problem. But there's nothing here to talk about how.
So I'm kind of hearing two different things.
Yes.
And what you're saying, this is what it means to me. This is my background's in incident response. You identify, you prepare obviously ahead of time to prevent things from happening. In the event that something does happen, you need the ability to detect it happening. Then there's the eradication, which is basically remove the bad stuff. And then there's the recovery, which is, okay, let's restore from a trusted, known good source, or a clean media, basically, or something we trust, or make sure our data still has integrity and all that other stuff. So you can throw a life cycle into this. These are just high-level examples, though, but still a valid point in terms of the life cycle of incident response, because in the countermeasure, it doesn't say how you actually eradicated the situation. What did you do to remove whatever bad stuff was there?
So if we look at these security definitions from vulnerability through countermeasures, none of this is really in the recovery mode. None of this is all. This attack surface
Just
really is not
purely
getting-
high level. We haven't thrown in life cycle into it yet. So right now, what we're kind of doing, big picture wise, we're just kind of listing the stuff out, and we're going to start assembling this into life cycle eventually.
Okay.
But good observation. I was very intuitive. All right, so you got to have a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach.
Yes.
So which one's better, top-down or bottom-up?
Gotta have
I got one for bottom-up.
Top down.
Gotta
I got
have
two for top-down.
both.
It depends is a great answer. You can't have purely one, this is the way it's going to be from the top, because you know what they say, falls downhill, right? You can't just have, this is the way it's going to be, because by the time that message gets to the bottom, you're going to have people going, well, why in the heck are we doing it this way? Have you ever seen the TV show, Undercover CEO?
Undercover boss.
Undercover Boss, right? And there was the classic example of waste management, where basically the policy is you need to stick to your route, this, that, and the other.
Be on time.
And what they had learned from that is like there was no error for even somebody needing to use the restroom.
Yeah.
So the poor lady on the episode, she had to basically carry around her own method of going to the restroom. And so when the boss went out and spent the day with her, he goes like, man, this policy sucks. I mean, how could you, I can't have this.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a balance between what trickles down from upper management, but also how does that affect the people on the floor. And in the same way, there's also the bottom up. In many cases, the upper management people need the information on the bottom, like your incident responders, right? Let's say if your incident responders are the lower management, they also need to be able to report to upper management to say, look, this is how hot the fire is. What should we do? Okay, pull them out. Okay, so yeah, a little balance of this goes a long way. However, for the sake of the ISC squared exam, understand that upper management has the overall responsibility, and they're the ones that are liable. So they need to They need to be the ones standing behind the organization and cheerleading the organization to success, because they assume full responsibility.
So pretty much it's based on them championing it.
It's completely champion-oriented. Raise your hand if you're a PMP. Anybody at all? You're PMP? Okay. Because I can speak that language too. All right, so you gotta have your I call them cheerleaders, but champion or cheerleaders here as well. So there's the champion for the organization as a whole. That is really anybody with a C in their title, Chief Information Officer, CEO, things like that. But then there's also mid-level management, which has more of a granular, functional, day-to-day touch. They're the people that are closest to the day-to-day needs of the organization. All right. Next, you got organizational security models. You need a plan to get secured, ultimately, is what we need to do. So these organizational security components, these tend to be frameworks so that you can plug in different modules of security. So in this case, what we're speaking to is framework. My teaching way of describing framework is an ice cube tray. An ice cube tray is the framework so that you can put in water, which will turn to ice cubes. And in this case, the ice cubes could be physical, administrative, technical, operational controls, or preventative, detective, deterrent, corrective, or however you want to divide it up. It's just a framework so that you can substitute different components in and out. Agree or disagree? All right. Would you like some easy points on your practice exam?
Yeah.
All right. I know, but I got to get your attention anyway. So don't say I didn't ask, right? Somebody should keep a tally on how many times they'll say you want some free points in your practice exams. All right, so you got to understand the planning horizon. This is about as far out as you can see into the future. So you can break this down into strategic goals, operational goals, and tactical goals, and circle those. Operational goals and tactical goals. Whoops. All right. So at this point, I just want to go to the big picture here. Planning horizon is as far as you can see into the future, and we're going to look at the operational, tactical, and goals next. So let's just do it. You got strategic goals, tactical goals, and operational goals. Everybody got that? So, here's what I want you to write down. Operational goals, circle day to day. If you have a service background, normally your day-to-day goals are your tactical goals. Here it's going to be different. Here, operational means day to day. So, your daily shift reports, your daily reports, that's day to day, which would be your operational goals. Okay? Your tactical goals, weeks or months. I like to refer to that as short term. So write down tactical equals short term. You could throw in change configuration or change management into that as well, because that's how you get things into production over the short term.
Why do they do that?
Do what?
Change tactical and operational in terms of what the heck they mean? That's going to be the biggest problem for me on this test, guarantee.
Well, now you know. And G.I. Joe said, knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
It says operational goals and then it defines that as short-term goals. And then on the next one it says tactical goals, weeks or months.
So it's like operational or all, like today, short term.
Here's what I'm telling you. Here's what I'm telling you. Operational, day to day. Tactical, short term, weeks. Use my wording. I'm the one prepping you for the exam, so I like to think I have some sort of responsibility in seeing you right direction. So in this case, a little guidance goes a long way. Despite who actually wrote the slides.
He's banging his foot.
Bang your head against the table, right? All right. Strategic is more of long-term. Circle long-term. This could be several budgeting quarters, for example. What are we doing in the third quarter versus the fourth quarter? Longer term, or even 1, 3, and 5 year plans. That would also be under strategic or long term. Whether, let's go back, with tactical, that could actually be more towards weeks, months, or quarters. Whether as strategic, that's years basically. So what are we doing in the first year of the contract versus the third year of the contract versus the fifth year of the contract? All right, so you could say like in 5 years we'd like to upgrade all of our smart cards. That would be a strategic plan. Go ahead, what's ask your question?
Did I miss something on TCO? No, go to lower TCO. Did I miss an acronym somewhere?
What is TCO, total cost of ownership?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, TCO, sorry about that.
I just
TCO
wondered
is
if I
total
missed
cost of
something.
ownership.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
strategically over 5 years, let's reduce the total cost of ownership, right? So there's all sorts of ways to do it, and this is no definitive list here, so you can pick any one of these examples and go, oh yeah, that's what, we implemented smart cards for whatever reason. All right, there's also the public sector versus the private sector. You have government and non-government. You see the difference in the way they operate? Government tends to have unlimited money, all right? That's the fallacy of that. So they have the time and the resources, in theory, time and the resources to actually do this stuff. Whether the private sector, they don't necessarily care to spend all of their time and money tracking stuff down, because it's more about productivity and let's make sure that we're profitable first. Whether government's primary role is not to be profitable.
Because it's easier to convince a commercial entity that they need to do it, because you can always, you can always focus them back on their risk to their income.
Okay.
With the military organization, it's much more difficult to define the risks.
Does red tape mean anything to you?
Yeah.
I'll say it's not. I would not. It's not always easy to convince commercial entities on their risk exposure.
But if you can tie it to dollar value,
Even tying it to dollar value, the DCO we were doing was related to electric power grid and the vulnerabilities associated with electric power grid. Most electric companies are assuming the risk with that because they don't want to spend the money it would take to secure themselves, so they're accepting the risk.
But they're accepting the risk based on a value judgment.
No.
It costs me more to secure it than I'm going to lose when I happen.
They're based on an uninformed cost analysis.
Well, that's
Because when you inform the folks of the risk and cost, they change their mind.
Yeah, and that's what I'm.
So it's an uninformed cost analysis.
That's what I'm.
Okay.
Okay. So public versus private. So risk management and risk analysis. Risk management is the process of detecting, determining, and actually reducing risk to an acceptable level. What I want everybody to do is highlight reduce risk to acceptable level. The reason being is because you can never have a risk of zero. You can have risk that's very, very low, but it's never going to be zero. Never going to be impossible. Don't forget divine intervention can play a role in that. So this is the whole life cycle component of it here. It's the identification of risks, tracking of risks, the mitigation of risks, and it happens over and over and over and over again on some sort of regular frequency. So areas of risks, things like risk to physical damage. So let's play. Let's see if we can do it this way. What part of the IAC triad would, if something is physically damaged, what part of the IAC triad? Okay, so it's physical damage, that assumes that the UK, now we can't use it, and there you go. But what about it's physically damaged? Could I just throw the hard drive away?
Well, then you have maybe
Confidentiality.
So it could affect confidentiality as well, too. What about human error? How would that affect your IAC triad? Potentially all of them, exactly. Equipment malfunction, we'll chalk that up to damage. Although it's not exactly the same. Inside versus outside attacks, how would that affect the IAC triad?
Integrity and confidentiality.
And also there's a larger risk of internal users versus external users. So you got to worry about the internal users changing, which have they have the most access to the data. So those are the people that are worried about changing the integrity or disclosing things that they shouldn't disclose, or loss of data. Let's do domain 1. This will be information security management, domain 1. There's lots of low-hanging fruit here in this section.
Sorry. Put mine over here.
That's right. Alright, so this is an overview. Some of the more important stuff here is certainly going to be your IAC triad. That's right, circle it up. Risk management, right here in the center, definitely something big. Data classification in terms of keeping things, either their integrity or keeping them confidential is also going to be huge. And then the ISC score is always going to make a big deal about security awareness and training. And then we'll cover some lab activities. We'll actually review some case studies and do some practice test questions as well. All right. So you want to take a big stab in the dark here. Why is information security so important? What's the immediate thing that comes off the top of your head? Somebody comes up to you in a board meeting and says, information security, that's important. What are they gonna say after that? Why is it important?
Keep profits high.
Keep profits high, you capitalists. You rich people, you.
Take valuable information.
All right, to protect valuable information.
Or if you're like in the defense sector, to save lives.
Okay, save lives. It could be as simple as saving lives. Let me do this for you. Let's keep a tab here of some important stuff. I'm going to draw the IAC triad over here, and we'll keep that as a running notes of things on the IAC triad to keep in mind. One of the things that I teach is I teach keywords. So it's kind of like cause and effect. If you can remember some of the keywords and you can pick up on these keywords, that's always going to be huge. Because you got to take 1,100 pages of basic material. You got to crunch that down into 60, and then you got to take those 60 pages and crunch that down into 10, ultimately down into 1 page or a few pages worth of notes. All right, so. The biggest thing here with the IAC triad is to protect integrity, confidentiality, and make sure that things are authenticated and that you prove who does something, which is really non-repudiation. But there are many different types of abuse. It could be hackers, which are more or less external, but internal employees, they actually touch almost all of your data more so than the outside world. It's easy just to cut the outside world off. But from working a help desk and from an incident response point of view, you actually, internal employees, you got to watch out for those. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
Yes, agree.
All right, and then there's also things like natural disasters, man-made events or natural disasters, and they also can affect things. You got to plan for the unexpected. And you could say, natural disasters, some things you can plan for, other things that you don't necessarily plan for, but you got to prepare for them to happen anyway. All right, so the moral of the story, this speaks to computer security attacks. What's the trend? Yeah, it increases dramatically, almost exponentially. There could be a variety of reasons for this. It could be just as simple as, well, in 1995, nobody considered this that important, so there wasn't that much reporting. Maybe there's just better reporting, now than prior. So it could be just as simple as that. When it comes to management, there's risk management, or managing of risk, so we'll talk about the whole risk life cycle, and then security policies, which is your organization's standpoint. There's also, you can break this down into, I call it policies, procedures, standards, and guidelines, oh my. Policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines, oh my. Kind of like the Wizard of Oz, because you can roll through it, you can remember it, it's got a nice warm and fuzzy feeling to it. But also to make sure that people are trained or aware what goes on, And that could be just as simple as your annual security awareness training or specialized training for managers or anybody in a niche role. It could be project management too, right? But ultimately, we're trying to protect the company's assets. In most cases, that's in the form of information these days. So, who has ultimate responsibility? CEO has ultimate responsibility, but computer security is everyone's responsibility. See the slight difference there? Everyone has a part in information security, but the CEO is always ultimately responsible. So a company needs to do things like look at their business objectives, find out what risks apply to those objectives, and make sure that you stay productive while you're assessing risk, things like that. You have organizational requirements, but then you have functional requirements too. What do you think the difference is between the two?
Well, so the functional crosses the multiple organizations. It's something that's responsible, like you said, computer security is everybody's responsibility.
Yeah, if you want to break it down into functional area departments, right? You'd have networking, you'd have database folks, you'd have your firewall team, your change control boards, and they have functional requirements, but that is under the parent organizational requirements. So the organizational policies trump what happens here at the functional level. In other words, they have to be in line with the mission of their organization. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. That's different than what I was saying, but I agree with what you're saying.
Okay. All right, so things that upper management should do. The big picture is they got to protect their assets. So you're going to need to assign a value to that asset. And on a per asset basis, you need to go through, assign values to those, so that way you can do your risk calculation. And here you go. Notice the trend and pattern. Policies, procedures, standards, and guidelines of mine. Policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines of mine. How easy is that to remember? We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard of CISSP.
What was the last one?
Policies, procedures, standards, and guidelines. Oh my. Oh my.
Oh my. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the song.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, it could be a French thing too. Oh my. Alright.
That was up here.
So once you find out what your assets are that you want to protect and you assign a value to them, somebody's going to have to protect it. So that's where roles and responsibilities are going to fall in place. Who is going to be protecting it?
To me, the big distinction there is, and I don't know when it came along, but people used to talk about just protecting their information technology assets, right? They used to talk about protecting their network. And what they really need to do is they need to protect both. They need to assign responsibilities for protecting their information and their information technology.
Right. It's no longer limited to just IT. This isn't just an IT thing anymore.
Because it's the impact. When you start talking about impact and what's the result, that's where you need the information.
Right. Like you and your life. Think about your house and your home, right? If something goes wrong with your computer systems, could that affect the family? Sure. But apply the opposite. Is that the only thing that could affect the family? No, there's lots of things that could, and they don't have to be IT related. Take the same approach here with a business. Just an impact to IT, that's not the only thing that affects the business. There's lots of things non-IT oriented that could affect ultimately the business or the bottom line. All right, so would you like some super easy points? No? All right, fine, we'll skip these.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Exactly.
We want some easy points. Yes.
So we're going to start developing a chart. And I might as well just give you the chart now so you get it. I want you to draw this chart. I call it the Palto model. Preventative, detective, deterrent, corrective, recovery, compensative, and you can even throw in directive controls if you want to as well. Palto. Palto stands for physical, administrative, logical or technical, and then operational. And these are going to be your columns. Your rows are going to be preventative, detective, deterrent, corrective, recovery, compensative, and directive. This is also on page 241 of the Sean Harris book, version 5. If you want to reference it.
Can you say what Palto means again?
Physical, administrative, technical and logical mean the same thing, and operational.
What page was that? 5?
241.
241.
Double check that, make sure I'm giving the right page reference.
Yeah, start on.
Yeah, 241, exactly what I'm getting at. 240, 241, you'll see a big chart. Now, what is the one thing, what strikes you out about this chart? Compensative. Compensative is really everything, isn't it? So how could that possibly be? These are controls that are in addition to or their lack of. So think about a door for a second. If I have a regular door with a handle on it and I add a deadbolt, I'm compensating by adding a deadbolt because the existing lock isn't that great. So it's in addition to. But also if there was no lock and I put a door lock on there, it's their lack of. So compensative controls get hit for everything. It's really easy to say that you're compensating for the lack of something or in addition to something. So corrective is easy. Directive is mostly administrative controls. And then the major ones are probably, the ones that get the most attention anyway, are preventative, detective, and deterrent. Those are going to be your top 3. Now, that chart on page 240, 241, you can close your books there if you want on that, because there's no value in looking at a pre-filled out chart. 0 value whatsoever. There is a significant amount of value. How much value? Significant amount of value if you can use this chart and think through the process. Okay? So, let's do one. A lock on a door. Is that a physical, administrative, technical, or logical operation? That's physical. A physical lock. Okay? Security, awareness, and training.
Logical.
Administrative.
So more of an administrative control. Separation of duties. Administrative control. A firewall.
Physical.
Okay, the physical element of, hey, there is a physical appliance, but more likely all of its processing is technical or logical. Or how about operationally? Let's think of something like, you can only log on to the network between the hours of 7 and 6. That's an operational control or a time-based control. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
All right. So let's take something like intrusion detection. Is that physical, administrative, technical, logical, or operational?
Technical.
Yeah, logical and technical. It depends is a great answer, because don't you have physical-based intrusion detection systems like the gates around some of the Army bases and things like that? Right, so it depends is a possible answer. What about the camera that sits behind the desk at 7-Eleven?
Physical.
All right, so the camera in itself is a physical piece. I didn't say it was plugged in, right? That same camera is now plugged into a DVR system. It's both physical and technical logical. And if you have a policy that says you're going to review the camera every day, that would be the administrative piece of it. So it depends is a great answer. You have to think through these things. Now, where you're going to get the most significant value of this is when you have your answers A, B, C, and D. And when you can say answer A is physical, answer B is physical, answer C is physical, and answer D is administrative. Well, that's a pattern. Patterns are good when we're taking tests. So immediately you got to go, well, is the question asking about the administrative control, or is it asking about the physical ones? If it's an administrative control-based question, you better pick an administrative control-based answer. Okay? So thinking through this is going to be huge. How about a firewall? Where does a firewall fit into this? Technical or logical. And will that firewall prevent people from getting access to something? Sure.
Only if it's configured correctly.
Okay, assuming it's configured correctly.
Like more
How about will it at least detect that people tried to access something? I was thinking you have auditing a setup on it.
That's the type of thing that we don't want to be doing with the questions, though, is trying to overthink them and.
No, you need to think through in this process.
I mean,
to-
like making the assumption, well, if it's configured properly, type of thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't assume that. That's a good point. You know, either they're going to say it or they're not. When you start making assumptions. So what did Samuel L. Jackson say about assumptions?
Makes an ass out of you.
Make an ass out of you an umption. Right? So he said it best. So the firewalls do detect. Do they deter?
Yeah.
Possibly. Most people
point.
look at a firewall as kind of like a joke nowadays. So, you know, while the technical firewall may not be a deterrent, the physical intrusion detection that's got an electrified fence, that may be a deterrent. You know, the security guard sitting in the bank lobby, that may be a deterrent from actually robbing the bank. So walking through this process, it has more value than trying to memorize all of the individual components. So again, context versus content. Context says it's the point of view. I'm telling you the point of view is to walk through this and get used to walking through this every single time. And it's really not so much as to the content or what each individual is. Because there's, well, for every control that's out there, there would be a possibility that's going to be somewhere in this chart. So I don't want you memorizing this, but I do want you to have the ability to think through this and find patterns in your answers on your practice test. That has a whole lot of value. So in this case, we're seeing the first piece of this: physical, administrative, and technical. Okay? Some people call it PAT, the PAT model, physical, administrative, technical. I call it Palto because technical is also known as logical, and then there is the element of operational controls as well. You guys with me saying huh?
Yeah.
All right, good.
So we expect to see this broken out as Palto or PAT, like in the example?
Palto is just a slight extension of PAT. So I have PAT in here as well. Physical, administrative, and technical. Just these two are also interchangeable, and then you can also add in the operational piece. So I'd say knowing it as Palto would probably be a little bit more comprehensive.
Are you looking for this?
Yes, I am looking for that. Thank you. And next time you're going to steal stuff, I'd appreciate it if you just let me know.
No problem.
All right, so management should create a security administration role used to enforce these technical, physical, and administrative controls. So we look at things in terms of physical, administrative, and technical controls. Any questions? All right. So let's look at some examples of administrative controls. Now, here's what you have to ask. Do these make sense? Because this is not an exhaustive list. So do these make sense? Does it make sense that policy, standards, procedures, and guidelines, oh my, that they are administrative controls? Because what you need to have the ability to do, if I throw all of these up in the air and they all land on the floor, we need to be able to pick them up and put them in their respective pile. All right, so do these make sense?
Some of them
All right, so which
leach
ones
over
don't?
into, some of them leach over into some of the other
Oh, of
areas
course.
too.
So standards,
So,
You could say a technical standard or
right.
a standard for physical security.
Talking about CM. CM is
CEM?
no CM configuration
Oh,
management.
configuration management.
Is really implemented in a technological environment. It may have administrative drivers, but it's really not a control that is done at the administrative level. It's done at a technological level.
Well,
But it's a process-based type of tool.
All of this is process based too. Everything's process based.
carrying out the decisions of the administrative board is a technical, it's definitely one.
So the technical review board versus, do you have a physical review board? Or an operational review board?
So based on the fact that some of this
Kind of all
leaches
gets lumped in
over,
there together.
if this leaches over into other areas, how do you know which one they're trying to get to? Because if you talk about configuration management particularly, I mean,
That would be more administrative control. Put them in the macro bucket, not the micro bucket. So if you can just put them in the big picture. Also, you'd have to go, well, what is the question asking at hand? Like for example, firewalls. That's a very technical piece. But I have a policy that says, hey, I'm going to review the firewall logs once a week, or every single day, or whatever the policy.
The firewall's going to have CM associated with it. So is that firewall being implemented using configuration management?
Right. Okay. So you want to update an access control list. So the fact that you have, you want to change the access control list, so you have to submit that request to the change control board. They're going to review that, do their technical evaluation.
That's an administrative process.
This is an administrative process, even though you are administrating technical content or physical or operational.
That same process is going to go across Palto.
Yeah.
So none of that's going to happen without what you just said. I'm not going to change anything physical or administrative or logical technical or operationally without that same process.
I would go through the process, yes.
No, I'm saying that process of having to go to a board of some sort that manages all of that, you're going to have to go through that in any of those. So the fact that you have to do that doesn't in itself make it administrative.
But
The fact I have to go through an administrative process to...
It makes configuration management administrative, but it does not make firewalls or any of the other aspects that you're managing administrative. It just makes the configuration management process administrative.
Again,
all the things that you're managing are not, most of the things you're managing are not administrative. They'll be physical or logical, technical, or other things, but the process is an administrative process.
And I'm saying all of the process to instantiate any of these things is administrative.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I have an administrative process to instantiate any of these Palto security protocols across the board. It's an administrative process for all of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can have that same argument for everything that we're doing. Well, you got to go through the administrative process to do that. To hire guards, to put up security cameras, to do anything, I'm going to have to go through that same administrative process. It doesn't make the solution. It doesn't make the solution administrative.
No, it does not.
Correct. And so that's what I'm getting to. Is CM as a solution is not an administrative solution.
The CM process is an administrative process.
We need to keep it within the context.
But CM applies to all of your technical, physical, all of your other stuff. Right?
It's
But
good to see the
CM
discussion and kind of see where it goes. But policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines are considered administrative.
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
Right. So I always say that it depends is a great answer. It always helps to second guess and go, well, what do they mean by this? Did they mean administrative? Did they mean this at the administrative context? Or is it more of one of the others, for example? So it depends is a great answer when it comes to this. So let's look at a few more and see if we get some questions. So you got technical controls, some things like just designing your network. All right, that could be a technical or logical control, depending on how you want to design it architecturally. Also, when it comes to access control, you have the identification, authentication, authorization of users, and of course, all that should be audited. You could look at technical or even somewhat physical devices of smart cards and biometrics, and make sure that people have the rights and the permissions to what they need. And you can throw in the concept of least privilege here, which states that you only give users access to things that they need and no more.
And some of those that you have there are CM implementation.
You would implement these.
through CM.
Those are
CM.
those are configuration management implementations.
Yes, very common.
You would use the CM process to implement it. Yes.
Yeah, agreed. And then physical controls. In this case, we're actually looking at the physical piece of it. In most cases, you can actually reach out and touch this stuff. In some cases, you might not be able to touch it directly, but it is a physical control somewhere. And
So
then
you
also, go ahead.
You can define the like the CAT card, for example. Like that's a physical,
The physical CAT card.
but it's the technology within the CAT card
On
that
the
makes
card.
it that defines the control that it belongs to.
And then I have an administrative policy that says everybody's going to use CAT cards. So there's multiple pieces of it. So it depends. It all depends on how you want to look at the information, or more importantly to you, how your practice tests are going to look into the information. So environmental controls. What do they sound like? Everyone want to take a wild guess?
That'd be like space power
Air
cooling.
conditioning, heat.
HVAC, heating, cooling, power requirements, yes, all of those. Or you may want to just stick a physical guard or a guard dog in place. All right, so the IAC Triad. Let's do your IAC Triad. You guys see this over here?
Why
Is
do
it-
you call it IAC?
Some people call it the CIA Triad, other people call it the IAC Triad. Apparently, the CIA Triad was too difficult because people confused it with the Central Intelligence Agency.
Actually, it's easier for me, because it's easier for me to remember CIA than it is IAC.
Okay, CIA Triad from now on.
I would just kind
I
of.
prefer it alphabetical. How about ACI?
Right, there you go. Now you're thinking. I like that. What were you gonna say? All right, so there's keywords that are associated with these, and you guys need to write them down. So keywords for integrity, and the importance of keywords is it tunes you into the material and what they're asking about in terms of principles. So when you see keywords like change, modify, alter, or add, delete,
Those are the keywords.
those are keywords that mean integrity. Because what we want to do with integrity is we want to prevent unauthorized change or unauthorized modifications or unauthorized alterations. We want to prevent somebody from adding or deleting in an unauthorized manner. As opposed to confidentiality, some of your keywords would be things like secrecy. Secrecy, privacy, encrypt, or decrypt. And you can even add your symmetric algorithms down here too. You can do things like DES, AES, triple DES. For integrity, you could add protocols like MD5, or SHA, or hashing, or message digest. This is your keywords. This is your roadmap here. Change, modify, alter, delete, SHA, MD5, hashing, message digest for integrity, secrecy, privacy. And see, what happens is when you're reading the material, you tend to naturally jump right over these keywords. Right? We don't put emphasis on the action words, if you will. Well, I'm telling you that if you miss those, you're in a world of hurt. But anytime you see these keywords, you can stop and go, wait a second. This is some really important stuff. If the question is asking about integrity, you better choose an integrity-based answer. If the question's asking about confidentiality, you better pick a confidentiality-based answer. And so you can use this as a roadmap. In my opinion, I use it as a roadmap to eliminate wrong answers. You know, my strategy is not to identify the correct answers, but to identify the wrong answers, therefore leaving myself with the correct answer. And that tends to be a more powerful strategy, especially on this material. You know, as a technical person, with the problem with technical people, raise your hand if you consider yourself technical. All right, that's about half of you. From now on, cut it out. It's not going to help you. Technical people tend to pick an answer and they will do anything they can to mold that answer into being correct. They won't let go on it because they have some sort of experience or they know better or whatever it is. That's their answer and that's the one they're going with. And they can make it correct if they technically try hard enough. And I'm here to tell you that, well, you might want to consider the alternative. Eliminate wrong answers and you leave yourself with the correct answer, whether it's technical or not. As a technical person, you want to like the answer that you're going to actually select. Like it makes sense. It makes logical sense. Why wouldn't I like the answer? Well, I'm telling you that you can derive an answer and leave yourself with the answer, whether you like it or not. That's the answer that you're going to pick. So, secrecy, confidentiality, any of the symmetric algorithms, DES, AES, 3DAS, these are algorithms used to hide things. In other words, keep them hidden or keep them confidential. Secrecy, privacy, encrypt or decrypt. Those are all keywords that mean confidentiality, as opposed to